Good day, two-wheeled friends. Zack here with RevZilla, and welcome to another episode of Daily Rider, where we learn about motorcycles as we ride. Our guest on today's show is none other than the Honda Grom. So that's a 3/5 size motorcycle with a 125cc engine and a darn good attitude, for sale for $3,500. In a lot of ways, it is a small motorcycle, but the splash it made when it arrived, the culture it's created, and the experience of riding it feel big and important. So we'll talk about that as we ride to work today. Hopefully learn a thing or two and have some fun along the way. Let's get our Grom on. All right, everybody, just about ready to go. Before we do, a friendly reminder that this episode of Daily Rider is brought to you by Michelin. Michelin makes tires for all of the bikes we cover here on Daily Rider and many more. More to the point, Michelin is a fan of Daily Rider, which means for every Michelin product you buy at RevZilla.com, Daily Rider gets a little bit of credit. So next time you need tires for your street bike, your dirt bike, your mini moto runabout, whatever it is, click on the link in the description of this video, shop Michelin products, and you will be supporting Daily Rider. All right, now we can dive into this Honda Grom. One thing I'd like to say from the get-go here is, for you Daily Rider faithful, you motorcycle veterans, I will hopefully be talking to you about things that you care about the Grom. We'll be having some fun today. If you're brand new to motorcycling, welcome. If this is your first or one of your first motorcycle videos because you're interested in the Honda Grom, hopefully you'll find this video interesting too. And I'm going to be talking to you as well. And all of my veteran viewers who know all about motorcycles are going to be very patient with you, because we would like you to enjoy motorcycling as a whole. So without further ado, I'm going to make everybody happy all the time and go. So, the Honda Grom debuted in 2014 here in the United States. I went to the very first event at American Honda exactly 10 years ago last month. So it's a good time to revisit the Honda Grom here on Daily Rider. At its beating heart, a 124cc single-cylinder air-cooled engine. It is very simple. It has been updated in 2022. It has a higher compression ratio, larger airbox, and a slightly different bore and stroke ratio, which we'll talk about more later for you motorcycle nerds out there. Other important updates for the bike include a slightly larger gas tank in 2022 at 1.6 gallons, up from 1.45, and a reshaped seat, a little bit flatter. And the seat height technically changed a little bit, but it's essentially the same. Other than that, the basic outline of the bike is that most things are pretty small. This is a 31 millimeter fork, I think, which is pretty darn small. It's a 220 mil disc up front, 12-inch wheels. It's a small motorcycle. On the other hand, some of the things about the bike are not so small. The seat height, for example, is 30 inches, which is pretty standard seat height for a regular motorcycle. And it's got 4 inches of suspension travel, which isn't bad considering it's very small. So let's fire it up, shall we? It's a little 2-color LCD screen that shows us all our information, which we'll talk more about later in the ride, of course. And then when you fire this bad boy up, boy, is it vicious. It is an extremely polite little engine. It's an extremely polite little bike. And I can't wait to ride it, share it with you guys. So let's get going, shall we? Oh, one thing I wanted to point out that actually was pointed out to me by a Daily Rider fan is that there are 90-degree valve stems. A 90-degree valve stem is very, very useful when it comes to checking tire pressure, because it means the valve stem sticks out this way instead of up toward the middle of the wheel. All right, everybody, let's get to work on the Grom, shall we? This daily ride is happening a little bit earlier in the day than usual, which I think means we're going to see a lot of traffic. But that's good. We want the Grom to face a gauntlet of city life, I think. All right, let's run through some basic specs, as we often do. As I said, base price of $34.99. That's with no ABS. It's $300 extra, $37.99 for a bike with ABS. We'll talk more about ABS later. Honda does have a claimed horsepower figure, 9.7 horsepower. We can call it 10, which is not very much, but also plenty for what the bike needs to do, as we'll find out. And with a full 1.6 gallons of gas in the tank, the bike tipped the Daily Rider scales at 223 pounds, which is very small. That 30-inch seat height that I mentioned, you can see I've got a pretty sharp bend in my knee. But one thing I like about it is that the riding position does not feel awkward. Even at 6'2", I feel comfortable enough on the bike. It's really sort of, it feels like another kind of standard motorcycle might, if not a little bit more compact. Okie dokie. Those of you that know the Daily Rider route know that we're peeling off it right now. We're not going to take the freeway. The Honda Grom is not legal for freeway travel, but that means we get more time on the little fella, which I think is all good. Back to the riding position, I think what I said in my first ride review that I wrote in 2013 was that you'll look silly way before you're uncomfortable. And I think that's still true. I probably look a little bit silly on this bike because I'm a 200-pound person riding around on a 200-pound motorcycle. So I'm basically as big as it is. But I'm not uncomfortable, and I like the shape of the new seat. I think it works well. It allows especially taller folks like myself to slide back and create a little bit of room if you want to, or slide forward, a little bit less of a scoop in the saddle, which I think is helpful for sort of adjusting comfort on the fly. So the Grom first landed on American shores, as I said, in 2013 as a 2014 model, and there were some people who really questioned what the heck Honda was thinking or talking about bringing what looked like a child's bike to the American market, which is all about bigger and more and faster and heavier and more luxurious. But since then, Honda has sold about 750,000, more than that actually, Groms worldwide, which makes it a pretty big success. Now granted, about 50,000 Groms, or MSX 125s as they're known, are sold in Thailand, where the bike is made, and that makes up for a lot of the global success of the bike in Southeast Asia, that is. But even in the United States, they sell around 10,000 Groms a year, which makes it one of the best-selling Hondas in the lineup, which I just think is impressive because there were so many questions, and remain questions to this day, from people about whether or not it's even a good idea, or who cares about this bike, or I don't get it. Well, obviously, thousands and thousands of people a year get it, and I think that's pretty cool. In California, it's legal to lane filter, which means scooting between vehicles and getting up to a red light, like you see those fancy Europeans doing. And is there a better bike for splitting lanes than a Honda Grom? I don't know that there is. All right, now we're bombing along this surface street at 40-something miles an hour, almost 50 miles an hour. And I'm gonna do something on this Grom that you couldn't do until last year. And that is shift from 4th gear to 5th gear. Hey-o! That's another update that I forgot to mention in the intro. The 5-speed gearbox, which, if you're familiar with motorcycles, is not super uncommon to have a 5-speed gearbox. But the Grom had a 4-speed, which always kind of separated it in my mind, despite the size and all the other things that make a Grom different from a regular motorcycle. The 4-speed gearbox really made it feel a little bit more like a toy. And I think that the 5th gear really does help a lot. It allows the gears to be spaced out much more broadly, I suppose. So 1st is shorter, 5th is taller than 1st and 4th in the previous model, and it helps the dynamic of the bike a lot. It makes it a little bit more usable. It makes the 10 horsepower a little bit more accessible. And if nothing else, it makes it feel a little bit more like a real motorcycle, which I think it deserves to, frankly. Another thing I think the 5th gear helps is overall fuel mileage, which is a topic that some people are often curious about. My fuel numbers were somewhere between 105 and 110 miles per gallon during this test. Interestingly, there was a disparity sometimes between the numbers calculated by the computer on board and the numbers calculated by me on my phone. It seemed like the bike is a little bit more optimistic, which is typical, frankly, with onboard computers. I don't want to get too lost in the weeds of fuel mileage figures for a Honda Grom. I think the important takeaway is that the fuel mileage is very good, And that's sort of what you need to remember here. You're not going to be disappointed with the fuel economy. Bask in it, you know? Speaking of fuel mileage, Freeway is up there. We are down here. That's something that I kind of like about the Honda Grom also. You could certainly say that the bike isn't allowed to go on the freeway, so therefore it's annoying and it lacks capability. And objectively, that's true. Subjectively, I'll tell you that I find it charming that I have to take different routes to get places on a Honda Grom. I find myself learning the neighborhoods around my house a little bit more. I find myself using my brain to get around the city a little bit more. If you don't like that, I don't blame you. But it's a little nuance to Grom riding and Grom ownership that might be overlooked, but I think is worth noting. Usually on Daily Rider we talk about mirrors, which in this case is a short discussion. The mirrors are pretty good. They could be a lot crappier, and I don't think people would complain, but they're pretty good, smooth. The other thing is being seen by other cars, and that's a complaint that I have seen on the internet about the Honda Grom, is that you're on a little tiny bike, right? And so what's to keep cars from running you over? Because they just won't see you. A couple things there. One, I would say that it's a piece of motorcycle riding that is good to think about from the standpoint of the rider, regardless of the size of the bike, to be honest with you. And you should, in some cases, be training your brain to be out of harm's way when you can be. And the other thing I would say is that 30-inch seat height that we talked about before, which is actually the same seat height as a Triumph Street Twin or Speed Twin 900, or taller seat height than cruisers, an Indian Scout or a Harley Sportster or something like that. So you are kind of upright, and I think at least as high as a window of a regular car or crossover, which for such a tiny little machine is all you can ask for, I think. All right, into residential neighborhood riding and the stop sign challenge, where we try to get 0 mile-per-hour stops without putting our feet down. Oh, and I screwed up the first one. Son of a peach. Well, I will say that, whoa, we're doing wheelies already? Hang on, Mr. Grom. Take it easy. That happens later. Holy smokes, man. Getting way off track. My goodness. I apologize, everyone. More to the point of the Round Town Challenge, this is what you might find yourself doing on the Honda Grom. Riding around town, around your neighborhood, which is right on the money for what the bike is sort of designed for and good at. And if you're a veteran rider, I think you'll find it's really fun. You're wide open a lot more than you normally are on a motorcycle, and it just feels like an appropriate environment. You don't feel like the bike is overriding or too much for where you are, which I think is good. And if you're a new rider, this might be where you're practicing riding a motorcycle for the first time because that's where you live and you have a little bike that doesn't go on the freeway. In either case, I think that the bike is so good at this, because it's light, because it's small, because it's approachable, all the things that read well on paper. But I also think that it's a very engaging machine to ride from a classic motorcycle standpoint. It's not like a scooter where there's no real transmission. I say real transmission, there's no gears to shift through. And it's not like some other Honda mini motos like the Super Cub, for example, which has the 4-speed semi-automatic transmission, so no clutch lever. You actually have to ride the Grom and be a part of the process of moving the bike forward, and you have to have coordination between throttle and brake and clutch. And that, to me, is the ultimate training tool, the ultimate reason that the Grom is so good at what it does, is that it's both engaging and fun to ride for a veteran rider, and very inviting and easy to understand and comprehend for riders that are new to it. All right, on to Lover's Lane. This is where we talk about passenger accommodations normally, and I can actually just sort of put the foot peg down and slide back onto the passenger pegs here and the passenger seat. And what you'll find with the passenger accommodations on the Grom is that they are compact, and if it's two full-size people on the bike, you're not going to want to go very far, because A, you're not going to be going very fast, and B, the foot pegs are pretty close to each other. So you can see I have a size 11 foot approximately, and if I were to be behind someone who also had a size 11 foot, our feet probably wouldn't fit next to each other. We'd have to be cautious playing footsies with each other. However, critical as you can be of the Grom's passenger accommodations, first of all, it's a tiny little bike, so cut it some slack, for crying out loud, Zach. And also, I appreciate that there are passenger accommodations because oddly, in Honda's lineup of mini moto machines, so that includes the Honda Monkey, the Super Cub that I mentioned before, the Trail 125, those bikes, none of them, I don't think, have passenger foot pegs. I could be wrong there. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think those are all single seat machines, and that always bums me out a little bit because one of the things about motorcycles that I really like while riding them by myself is what I do most of the time and very much enjoy. Sharing that experience with other people is great, and I appreciate that the Grom encourages that, or if it doesn't encourage it, at least it has the infrastructure in place to do it if you need to. All right, dipping into the twisty road section of the Daily Rider route, and this is, I suppose, yet another mixed bag for the Grom. In some ways, it is absolutely delightful on roads like this. And this, as we talk about pretty often on Daily Rider, is a sort of a suburban neighborhood that I ride through here. And you wouldn't really want to go at any kind of pace on a real motorcycle, but on a Grom, somehow it feels playful and it feels fun. It feels like you're zooming through the corners. And I appreciate that it takes a smaller set of curves to truly engage the Grom and make it fun, which is sort of the bike in a microcosm, but also worth noting if you live somewhere that's far away from quote-unquote real twisty roads. So I'd recommend going through a set of curves on a Grom to any old rider out there, but if you're a veteran rider with a lot of experience on different bikes, you will notice that the suspension is soft and it's not adjustable particularly, and it's unrefined in the way that you would sort of expect a diminutive, simple, runabout mini bike sort of thing to be. And if you want to, you can be disappointed that the suspension is soft or not good enough, and you can be sad that the tires aren't a higher spec, but I really feel like that's reaching beyond the expectations of what we should all have for this bike. And in general, whether it's going to a go-kart track for your first track day or just finding a set of twisty roads in a suburban neighborhood like I do here, I would definitely recommend it. It makes me laugh every time. I love it. Alrighty, as we come out of the twisty road section back to surface streets, I did have a question about how fast the Grom can get to 50 or 55 miles an hour, something like that. So here we go. You can see the shift light blinking, starting at about 6,500 RPM. I'm wide open here, rowing through the gears, and there we go, 50 miles an hour. Is it fast? No, definitely not. But I think it'll stay ahead of apathetic sedan drivers. If you find a mom or a dad in a minivan that's really in a rush, they're probably going to dust you in their Toyota Sienna or Honda Odyssey, whatever. But in general, if you're enthusiastic and traffic is not, I think you can stay ahead. Okie dokie, red light, we can talk about brakes. So we're gonna jump on the binders here and do a big stoppie because this bike does not have ABS, which I think is really fun. The brakes are pretty good, I think. I mean, it's a super simple setup there. It's a two-piston Nissan caliper with rubber lines, which is nothing super impressive, but of course the bike doesn't weigh all that much. The tires, while small in radius, are actually pretty beefy. I think the width of this tire, am I right, is this a 120 or is it a 110? Anyway, it's almost as wide as a full-size motorcycle tire. So the grip is pretty good, and I think the brakes are tuned extremely appropriately for this bike. Soft initial bite, but plenty of power if you squeeze the lever, which is always what you want. If you are a new rider and getting a Grom, I would splurge on the ABS, which for 2023 is a $300 option, so $37.99 brand spanking new, for a couple reasons. One, I think ABS is a very good safety feature. I think you should still work on your braking skills and try and hone those because it's very important in a panic situation. And two, according to some claims I read on the internet, depending where you live and your demographic, that kind of thing, you can save at least $300 pretty fast in insurance costs if you have ABS and not a bike without ABS. So that's something to keep on your radar as you're shopping and getting insurance and stuff like that for bikes. So I thought it was an interesting note made by a Daily Rider viewer. So I appreciate that. Good tip. I also learned along the way in my research that approximately 23% of Grom purchases are with ABS. So that shows me a couple things. One, a lot of people are buying the bikes thinking that they won't need that safety feature. A lot of Grom buyers are first-time motorcycle purchasers, but many Grom buyers are veteran motorcyclists and they don't really want ABS. And I have to say, if I was going to get one, I would not get ABS because I like doing stoppies, I like skidding around and messing around, and I like that the bike's a little bit lighter, a little bit less complex. And if I ever took it to a kart track and rode it or raced it around, I wouldn't want ABS in that situation either. It's one of those things where it's do as I say, not as I do, I suppose. All right, we're headed for our special shortcut as usual. And this is usually where we wax poetic about the Grom. We answer the question that we have been trying to this whole ride, which I actually don't know if there's a thesis question. I think the Grom is a small and unintimidating motorcycle that people feel like they understand. On paper, yes, it's easy to understand. But when you ride it, it's more delightful and more fun than you would expect it to be, considering how kind of simple and economically made it is. All right, time for a dirt road shortcut, just in case you're thinking of off-roading your Grom and bopping down a dirt road. Of course, we do not have ABS, we do not have traction control. We do have street tires, and this is where the sort of soft, squishy suspension is actually kind of handy. Soaks up the bumps real nice. You could put some knobbies on it if you wanted to do this, and you'd probably have some fun. Oh, there's a pedestrian. That's rare. A daily rider pedestrian. Well, we'll give him a wave. Hello there, friend. Yeah. Anyway, it's no dirt bike, but I wouldn't be intimidated by a dirt road if I were you. And let's see how it handles. Whoa, look out! Let's see how it handles this jump, shall we? We built a little new jump here. I leaned back so the fork wouldn't bottom, because that's usually what happens, if I'm honest, the fork bottoms, especially with a 200-pound person on it. And if you're going to do any actual jumping with the Grom, please do upgrade the suspension, or way less than 100 pounds is my advice. All right, now is where we see we can do a wheelie, which of course the Grom spoiled already by being a hooligan in the neighborhood section there, but you can do. Oh, there we go. Yeah. You can do pretty good wheelies on the Grom. It's not as easy to wheelie as I was expecting when I first rode the bike, and I still find it trickier than you might think. Doesn't have a lot of horsepower, you know, like a KTM 1290 Super Duke, pretty easy to wheelie because you got 100 and who knows what horsepower on tap, so you can always just lift the front wheel. But with 10 horsepower, you got to be a bit more of a safe breaker, which again, I don't know, I just find charming. I'm charmed by the bike, what can I say? Speaking of hooligan stuff, we can see if we can back the Grom in. Yeah, which you can, because there's no ABS, which is pretty fun, I gotta say. Although the Grom weight bias is already very much to the rear, and that's without a rider on it, so you do kind of want to jump on the front brakes pretty hard. If you do that, let's give it another try. Yeah, little hooligan fella, you little hooligan, you. Good fun on the Grom. I feel like I didn't even talk about some of the stuff I'm into. Like it's got an oil filter now instead of just an oil spinner. Did you know that? Cool, that was something I learned. Someone said that Olin suspension sells more parts for this bike than any other bike. Maybe that's true. Truth is stranger than fiction sometimes. Anyway, I'm sorry if I didn't talk about the thing that you wanted me to talk about. Please sound off in the comments if you like. Time for the U-turn challenge. We're going to get up in this parking space right here, real close to this car. We're going to go full lock to the left. We're not going to put our feet down, and we're going to see how quickly we can turn. That's pretty quick. Holy smokes. 1.2? Something like that? Oh my goodness. It's sort of like Honda figured out how to bottle pure fun. Like we found a spring with fun in it, and we just bottled it up. And this is what it looks like. It's really, really enjoyable to ride. Another thing that's new is breaking the exhaust pipe to fit aftermarket stuff a little bit more easily. there's lots of little tidbits, lots of fun stuff about the Honda Grom. I hope you enjoyed that ride. I'm going to answer some Instagram questions right now. People had a lot of good social media questions, and I'm excited about jumping into these ones. So let's do it. Okie dokie. Starting with our friends over at Yoshimura R&D. Yoshimura asks, why is this bike so darn fun? That's a big question, friends at Yosh. But I thought about it a little bit, and I think the reason it's so fun for people who are so invested in motorcycles, like the folks at Yoshimura, is that it's so elemental. It's so unpretentious. It doesn't pretend to be anything that it isn't. It's not like puffing out its chest and hiding behind specs or trying to impress anyone with anything other than the true basics of riding a motorcycle. And I think that's what everyone represents with. That's why it's so approachable and easy for people who are new to motorcycling, and that's why people who've been riding for a long time get on it and just feel so connected to a younger and less experienced version of themselves, because it's just pure. And I love that. Next question is from Matthias Harris, who says, sure, it's a lady magnet, and sure, it can out-drag a Ducati Panigale, but what are the service intervals? And I think this is a good question, because service intervals are tighter than other bikes. You have to check the valves in the spark plug, for example, more often than you would on a Ducati Panigale, I think, off the top of my head, every 4,000 miles or something like that. But a couple things there. One, 4,000 miles on a Grom is sort of more riding than a full-size motorcycle. And also, the beauty of this bike and this engine is that it is so very accessible. If you are someone who's getting into motorcycling and wants a do-it-yourself bike, a bike you could work on yourself a little bit, this is as accessible and easy as mechanics get in modern motorcycling. I mean, the spark plug's right here, the valve checks are right here, it's all right there, it's all easy to understand, it's simple, and that's something that I wanted to call out, because I think, if you pay your dealer to do it, it's going to be cheap, and if you do it yourself, I think it'll be encouraging. So I hope that sheds a light on for you. Next question is from CDTokC. CDTOTOKC. I'm butchering your username, I'm sure. Anyway, this person asked, what, in your opinion, is the best feature on the Grom, and what feature would you add if you could? Love this question. My favorite feature about the Grom is how comfortable it is. I think that people think that it's a toy. If they haven't ridden it, they think it's just you're going to be all scrunched up on it. It's actually a perfectly reasonable place to sit for long periods of time or short periods of time, whatever. And I think that's an awesome feature. I think it's a great aspect of the bike that's underappreciated by a lot of folks. So that's my favorite feature. If it were my bike, what would I add? That's a question. I would be tempted by an exhaust pipe. I'll be honest. I know I don't want to get into the whole loud pipe save lives thing, but it'd be cool to have like a sexy carbon pipe on it or something like that. I might splurge on something like that. I might also go for a little bit of luggage. I think one thing that the Grom lacks, which we'll talk about in a minute here, is storage of any kind. Realistically, I might put like a little, a tank bag. There's got to be some accessories out there. The Grom aftermarket accessory is overfloweth. So that's probably what I'd do. A little tail bag? Would I ruin it if I put a little tail trunk on there? Maybe I would. I don't know. That's my answer. A little bit wishy-washy. Sorry, but thank you. Excellent question. Next question is from Andy McMillan00, who said, what is the actual use case for a Grom? Not an ironic use, not a mini stunt hooligan bike. Why would this make more sense than one of a host of scooters, etc.? So, yeah, and that's a good question. That's why I was talking about storage, right? Because I was hinting at Andy's question. I would be very tempted to get a scooter instead of a Grom, because I think scooters are fun to ride for me. I find them sort of unique and playful, and I love that on a scooter a lot of times there's a place to put your helmet or some groceries or whatever underneath the seat, lockable waterproof storage, and I think that's super useful if you live in a city or maybe anywhere else. I don't know. As for Andy's question of what is the actual use case, I think today's daily ride is a use case. If you're interested in riding across town to get to work and you want to have fun, you don't want to make a huge investment, I think the Grom is a fun way to do that. It's an interesting application of motorcycling because you're not using a whole lot of horsepower or a whole lot of extra features to do something that is ultimately pretty simple. I lived in San Francisco for years and I commuted across town a few miles through lots of traffic, had to park in the city. I think this would have been a great bike to do that on. Would it have been my one and only bike? Maybe not. But would I have gotten into motorcycling that way or had an extra one in my garage just because it's fun? Yes, I think so. And because it's a real motorcycle with a real gearbox and you feel engaged when you ride it, I feel like it separates itself from scooters or slush box bikes like other Honda Minimotos. And I think I like that about it. I hope that answers your question. Next question is from B&T Outdoors, who asks, an analogy question, which I love, as you know, if the Grom were a Hollywood celebrity, which one would it be? So I will say, I would love everyone to sound off in the comments here. If the Grom was a Hollywood celebrity, what do you think it would be? Please put your answers below. I think we could have a lot of fun with this. I chewed it over. I thought about like maybe Danny DeVito, you know, small, likable. My wife suggested Aziz Ansari. And I think that's a good one, actually. It's a sort of Aziz Ansari of motorcycles. It's small, but energetic and snappy and always makes me laugh. I think that's my answer, Aziz Ansari. Even though I know Aziz does not watch Daily Rider, if he happens to find this video, I hope he's not offended by that. Love the Honda Grom. Love Aziz Ansari's comedic energy. I hope that answers your question. Last question comes from Two Wheels to Relax, who says, can you come up with a GROM acronym that sums up the bike? This is a great question. I wanted to end on this because, yet again, I want people to sound off in the comments if you have suggestions. I'm really bad at this kind of thing. I don't know what I came up with. It was something totally lame. Like, what was it? It was like gratifying, radical, obedient machine, something like that. Because I feel like that sums it up, right? It's so fun to ride. It's a little bit of a different idea in motorcycling, but it works. It's so easy and approachable and obedient. And of course, it's a little machine, which any of us in the two-wheel world is always sort of craving, right? That feeling of connecting with the vehicle and moving through space together. I think that's what brings us all here. It's a bad acronym. Hopefully some other people can come up with some better ones in the comments. Stick with me right now. We're going to put this baby on the Daily Rider leaderboard, and then I can let you go. Here we go, everybody.
All right, everybody, here we are at the Daily Rider leaderboard inside RevZilla West. As a friendly reminder, this is the main leaderboard for this season of Daily Rider. This is last season, 2020 and 2021, and vintage, old, classic, otherwise not brand new bikes over on this side here. We got the Honda Grom in the hopper, ready to go on the main Daily Rider leaderboard here. And it's a little bit of a tricky conversation, I think, because the Grom is so kind of diminutive and separates itself because it's little, basically. What I'm driving at is that, yes, it's extremely approachable and easy and fun and all of those things that I just talked about on the ride, but ultimately it's not super versatile. It doesn't go very fast. It's not really an off-road bike. You're hemmed in a little bit with the overall capability of the Grom, and I think it's only fair to account for that on the Daily Rider leaderboard. As an example, the Aprilia Touareg 660, extremely versatile bike, ride it anywhere, comfortable. Same goes for Ducati Desert X, Suzuki Gixxis 1000 GT, fast, powerful, luggage, travel, track day, whatever you want. Very versatile bike, very, very good. The Grom doesn't quite offer that in the same context anyway. All right, so I've made enough excuses about the Grom. Where it's gonna go on the leaderboard is down here somewhere. These three down here are sort of your city commuter bikes, and the Honda Grom is gonna go down here. It's gonna go at the top of this little list here. It's gonna go above the Vespa Primavera 150 because I appreciate the Grom being economical, both price-wise and in other ways as well. But I also like that it's a real motorcycle. I like that it's a 5-speed, do your own shifting, gas tank between your knees motorcycle. I like that. As you'll see, there are some emojis that we add here now and again. The BMW S1000 RR is spicy and pricey, so it's fast and expensive. You'll see there are some other bikes up here that get the little dollar sign for being pricey. Not once, I don't think, in the history of Daily Rider has a late model motorcycle, in other words, not a vintage bike, gotten a heart. And the Honda Grom gets a heart because it doesn't finish very well on the Daily Rider leaderboard as a whole, objectively. But man, is it lovable. So I think it deserves the Daily Rider heart, and you could say it deserves a better spot on the leaderboard, but in some ways it's a knife to a gunfight, and you just have to take my word for it when I tell you that it's awesome. I really hope that you got what you wanted to from this video, and as usual, I hope to see you next time on Daily Rider. Stay safe, everybody. Actually, while we're here, do you want me to show you a secret? Tell you a secret? Show you a secret? This is a Honda XL350, circa 1975. This is for CTXP. Where are Ari and I going with two vintage dual sports, and on what adventure? Early 2023 will tell. Stay tuned.
This person's taillights are out. Both of them. The only taillight they have is the center high mount safety light, and the other taillights are out. I want to tell them, but it just never goes well in Los Angeles. So I tell people their brake lights are out, and they're either very offended or they don't want to roll down the window because they think I'm going to try and rob them, which I think is crazy. But I just don't want them to get a ticket. That's all.